I do this so I can edit it out. I can take stuff off as needed, whatever. But I know I've been speaking in Colossians, and there's so much more in these 4 little chapters that I'm not going to get to. But I'm going to try to tie in a good part between chapter 2, where I left off last Sunday, and a little bit of chapter 3. So that first chapter was telling us just who Jesus is to us, what he did. And he also explained how he created everything that's visible and invisible. And keep in mind, if he created everything visible and invisible, everything, that includes everything. This is talking about the angels too that's in heaven. This is talking about the ones that's still there, the ones that was fallen. This is all those little ones that whispers into you, that wants to tempt you. The only one that would not be included in that would be the Father. Would be God himself. Because he said, all things. So we know who he is, and everything's created for him. And he holds everything into being. So that also tells me there's nothing that can be done in the heart or outside of the heart that he doesn't know. He knows the reason why we say the things we do. He knows the intent of why we do the things we do. Then we go into the second part. After he shows us who Christ is, he shows us how to become more in him. Set our roots into him. Set our roots and let them grow deeper into him. Don't just scratch the surface. Because what happens to a plant if you don't get it into the ground? You just put the roots on top of the ground. It's going to fall over, right? It's going to dry up. The roots are going to wilt. The whole thing is going to crumble because it needs to get into the soil so it can get the nutrients from it, so it can grow. The bigger the roots gets underneath the ground, the bigger the plant or the trees will get outside the ground. If our roots is not founded in him, in the true word of him, and if we're not growing, then our roots are setting outside and we are dying. That's what we learned last week. Now I want to go a little bit further into the definition of who we are, how we are. I'm not going to cover all of chapter 2, but just part of it. Chapter 2, it starts off, verse 1. I'm sorry, no, my bad. Did that last time. Let's jump on down to, let's start with 8. It says, see to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deception, according to the tradition of men. Now, what's the tradition of men? Why do we make philosophies?
To make themselves feel smarter, sir.
That's
They
it.
think they're smarter than God. He's told us not to buy into that. That's what most people do, and especially this day and age.
Absolutely. Yes. Most different religions was made so that they could feel good about doing something that the other ones they branched off from didn't like. Most cults is started because they want to do something their way instead of some other way. Most people will go from the faith that they had traditionally and seek another type of feel-good faith or philosophy, if you would, because they want to do what they want to do without having to stand judgment to anyone for it and say that they're right. Absolutely. That's the tradition of man. No one wants to say, I'm wrong. No one wants to say, I'm sorry. I did something wrong. Because before they can say, I'm sorry, they have to first look at themselves and say, I messed up. And then they have to eat crow. How many of y'all ate crow before? I don't mean the bird. I mean eating crow. metaphorically, where you go back and you have to tell someone you was wrong. It is the worst taste of mess that gets into your mouth at all. But honestly, I had to do it for about 3 years when I was trying to get over my anger issues. I forced myself to do it. It's nasty. But we have to get to that part where it's okay, because we know that we're none perfect. And that's the reason why these scriptures tells us about all the disciples, all the followers that messed up. There is no other faith that is going to tell you the main people in it and all of their mess ups, all of their faults. They were doing this and then they messed up again. They're not going to do that unless it's real. That's how we know this is real. So the tradition of man is to make us feel good.
Yeah, feel good. We're never wrong. We don't want to say we're sorry. Hey, I'm the smartest person in the room. I got this degree. I'm a Chief Warrant Officer 5. I'm Sergeant Major. I'm a General. I got a master's degree, and they really don't know nothing because it's right there in that book, and that'll teach everything.
That's it. And then we go on a little bit further, and this is actually a poke at them, because the Greek, which then after the Greek came, you got the Romans taking over this. The Greek loved philosophy. They loved knowledge. They loved educating. That's what they were known for. And so it says, don't be taken captive through philosophy and empty deception, according to the tradition of man, according to the elementary principles of the world, rather than according to Christ. Now, is that a slap in the face or what? Because he just now called the most prized wisdom that man could adhere to, and he called it elementary.
Mm-hmm.
Did you catch that?
Mm-hmm.
And we know that elementary, that's just like the basics. We haven't even scratched the surface on our knowledge in school. We haven't went to middle school yet. We haven't been to high school yet. We haven't been to college or trade school. None of that. Elementary compared to the knowledge that you can obtain from Christ. That's what he's saying here. Don't be taken away with the wisdom of the world, because the only wisdom that it will ever have is what's right in front of them. They must go beyond the physical, beyond what's right in front of them, to actually see true wisdom. And even then, it won't all be given to us.
Wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, straight out of Proverbs. And you're right, sir, it's not going to be all given to them. It's sort of like God gives it to us as we need it.
That's it. That is it. That's the reason why we have to constantly read his word, because we're always going to be facing something new. We're always going to face something different. But you will never face anything that God has not already seen. You will never face something, an endurance in this life that God has not already known about and made a way to be right there with you. Now, that does not mean he's not going to take it away from you. Just like in Psalms 23, he did not take the sheep out of harm's way by removing the sheep out of harm's way. But he had David right there that killed the lion, killed the bear, killed all these animals, protecting them, walking beside them. That's what his promise is to us. To walk with us, to continue beside us. Because he knows what's going to happen. That's why we seek him. That's why we continue to read. That's why we continue to grow. And we don't just sit back and just say, come what may. And keep on a little bit further. It says, for in him all the fullness of deity dwells in bodily form. What does that mean to y'all? The deity, all the power, everything in deity dwelled in bodily form. This is something for a few centuries they could not wrap their mind around. But it's one of the bases of our faith. That he was 100% human and 100% deity at the same time. He felt pain, he felt hunger, he felt temptation. Or else, how in the world could the devil tempt him in the garden? He felt all these things. We already covered how he went through fear at times. But he stayed true to who he was. But at that same time, he was still the Son of God. He still raised the dead. He still calmed the seas. He still went out there and healed people that medical science could never heal. He still rose again on the third day, just like he said he would, to make a way for you and for me. So that's who he was. So, and in him you have been made complete. And he is the head over all rule and authority. He has been made rule of all authority. Remember, we already discovered that nothing was made, visible or invisible, except for by him, through him, for him. Then in Matthew, the very last few verses, last 3-4 verses, whenever Jesus comes and talks to them right before he leaves, Matthew says that he's told them, all rule has been given to me, or all power has been given to me in heaven and on earth. If you're a king, how much power do you have over the area that you're in charge of?
The area you're in charge of, all power.
All power. That's right. If you have the reign over an area, you are king over that area. So that means we're not waiting for him to come. We're not waiting for his kingdom. We are living in his kingdom. Only question is, how are we living for him? See, right now we're trapped in this flesh. And this right here is what a lot of different faiths may have similar. But ours is a little different. And him you were also circumcised with a circumcision made without hands in the removal of the body of the flesh by the circumcision of Christ, having been buried with him in baptism, in which you were also raised up with him through faith in the working of God, who raised him from the dead. And when you were dead in your transgressions and uncircumcised, and the uncircumcision of your flesh, he made you alive together with him, having forgiven us all our transgressions. Now, there's a whole lot of things I can talk on about that, but I want to just narrow it down to one part. You see, there's a lot of different faiths, pagan groups and everything else, that will believe that this body is a tomb, and you will never know true freeness, pleasure, being free, utopia, until you can escape from this life, from this flesh. That's not what he's saying. He's saying that all of the pleasure, all of the expectations that you're waiting for can be felt inside whenever you come to know him. Because whenever you die with him to this flesh, the circumcision is not no more outward, but it's on the inside. And that's where we rose again. That's where we can feel the blessings that he has for us. Does that mean you're going to have pleasures and joy and everything be hunky-dory in this life? No. But just because all the world's crashing down around you, does that mean that you have to sit around mope and say, oh, everything's gone? No. No, I don't. Because honestly, I know what it's like to live like that. I know what it's like not to know if you're going to even have food a day, for the whole entire day. I know what it's like not to know if you're going to be able to scrounge up enough change for a pack of ramen noodles just so some kids can eat. And you still go without. I know what this is like. But I also know what it's like to find peace in the middle of all of that. See, Paul also writes about this. Paul also talks about, even no matter if I'm in prison, if I'm starving, if I'm cold, damp, wet, if people's trying to kill me, if I'm over here and I'm being praised and people are following me, so it doesn't matter. I found the joy inside that comes from Him. Because I know this isn't going to last forever. And that's the big picture.
And you'll have that no matter where you are, sir.
That's it. Money, it goes away. Money can go faster than it can come. Always. Things of this world, including people, they fade away. They will let you down. That's why we don't put our trust in people. We don't put our trust in things.
Just in God.
Just in God.
Not even in ourselves, only in God.
Because I will let myself down. Absolutely. That's right. That's the reason why I always tell y'all to take what I say and research it for yourself. Back it up. Study it. Keep everything in context. If I take anything out of context, I am wrong. Always go back and take it back to Christ. Take it back to His Word. A little deeper part. I want to jump on over to chapter 3 real quick. The position of the believer. How we're supposed to be. If we have been buried and rose again in Him, then this right here is how we're to act. If then you have been raised up with Christ, keep seeking the things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. So should we just say, hey, I made it. I'm good. And sit down?
Keep growing.
Keep letting your roots spread out so you can grow. Keep learning. Because we're never there until we're there. Set your mind on the things above, not on the things that are on earth. Now, since we have been born to Him, yes, we are in the flesh. Yes, we are in this world. We're living in this world. But we're also a born-again creature, living in God's kingdom for His glory, for His light to shine through us. So we are an alien in a foreign land. That means that our light, Him, who we are, should be representing. So there's no way I can go up north and tell them I'm a native of up north, right?
Neither, sir.
I mean, they say I have an accent. I really don't hear it, but they say I have an accent. And for that reason, I can never go up north and say, hey, I'm a native of here, because my speech will betray me. And such, being a native now, being born again, and a member of the true home. While we're living here, our speech, our actions, our character should betray us, so everybody knows that something is different. There's a lot of people that I've seen in church, out of church, claiming to be one thing and they're not. It doesn't matter if they go to church or not, to be honest with you. That's not where they're born. That's just the hospital that we get to. That's the place we go to build up. But a true church is not just in a building. It can be in the homes. It can be in a car. It can be beside the street. It can be on the phone. A true church is when you come together and you start talking about God. You start glorifying Him of what He's done for you, where He brought you from. Set your mind on the things above, not on the things that are. For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is our life, is revealed, then you also will be revealed with Him in glory. That right there is worth it all right there. This life is going to throw things at you. People's going to try to do stuff to us. What we used to think that we knew is going to change like a fad. But God never changes. All these words that we're reading, they were said over to about 2,000 years ago. And they're still just as true today. That's why we sung that song, Joy to the World. It talks about preparing your heart for the King. Whenever we circumcise our heart, we take away the things of the world that's been keeping us held down. The things of our life that people can see, like, are you from God or for the world? And if they can't tell, then maybe we should see if there's something else still in there. This is what he's talking about. Because it's not about how you began. It's about how you grow. Because even the grave is not the end. And we have to know that. We have to believe that. And knowing is an action. So as we leave here, continue to grow in Him. Continue to add nutrients. Because there's so much in this Word. So much that we can absorb. And we want to scratch the surface. The next part, it goes on to talk about the ones that would corrupt the church. Don't forget, this letter was written to Colossians, but then he also said send it to Laodicea. And yes, I was made fun of by the way I pronounced that. But then we find that that's one of the places in Revelations that he spoke to. They told him to figure out who they are. That he was disgusted with them. Some of the things that we hear all the time, the old man, he starts talking about, we see talking about people, maliceness, evil speech. This is stuff the world's going to do to us. This is stuff that we used to do before we came to Him. And we know it's going to be done to us. And if there's anyone in the church that's doing this, they need to reevaluate their heart. Reevaluate who they are. What he actually says is, therefore consider the members of your earthly body as dead to immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and greed, which amounts to idolatry. Loving things of the world more than God. It's the small things that we allow in that continues to grow, that starts hiding out God and His love. For it is on account of these things that the wrath of God will come. That says a lot, don't it?
Letting you know.
Yeah. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord. Yeah. And in them you also once walked when you were living in them. But now you also put them all aside: anger, wrath. What's the difference between anger and wrath? See, they both come from passion. But the anger is something that's building up inside. It's the way you perceive things, the way you're thinking about people, situations. Wrath is whenever it's right there bubbling over and you're acting on it.
So wrath is the action.
Yes. First is letting it build up until it goes into action. And then it goes on a little bit further. It says, but now also you put them all aside, anger, wrath, malice, and slander. This right here too is the same way. Maliceness would be perverting, thinking evil, trying to think of different ways to get at someone, making plans to come at someone. Then slander is talking about someone, murdering their name, doing stuff evil that you know isn't right. And abusive speech from your mouth, causing pain or needless hurt by the things you say.
And usually, sir, in any situation, like in my walks, and that's why I kind of like being who I am, because I can walk away. You're always walking up on somebody, and somebody's wanting to talk about somebody and tear them down. I can't stand that. Just if you don't have anything good to say, just keep your mouth shut.
That's it.
Why? And it's in every room, wherever, not just us, anywhere. And I guess they're thinking they're building themselves up in the world, and they're just going to get tore down too, because all that's right there, just what you read, all of that. And that's why I kind of like in these days, I always try to present a positive attitude, but I kind of like to be alone.
We actually have a word for that, gossip.
They love it.
We do love it, and you'll find before you even know it, you can be caught up in it. And
it's like you're pulled into it.
It pulls you.
And if you don't get pulled into it and get on their page, they're going to turn on you.
Yes.
Because you're not going to be what they are. What's wrong with you?
Yes.
I just don't want to,
And that is not just in the world. See, some of these things like this, you'll find some that has claimed to be believers, that they love to get into this because they don't realize just how deep it is upsetting their heart. Because if you go back to Ephesus, to the letter to Ephesus from Revelation 2, they lost their first love. So repent is what Jesus said to them. They were trying to keep out the false teachers. They were doing a lot of things right, but they forgot the love. And when we forget the love, then it's okay to blast someone. But one of these verses I just now read, such were you. And people forgets that. All the evil that others have done, I used to do that. I used to talk about people. And if I don't watch it, I'm guilty of it now.
Me too.
So I have to regard myself.
So we need to do everything in love.
Yes.
Always.
Yes. And never forget what Jesus said. He said, forgive others, because if you don't forgive, neither will the Heavenly Father in heaven forgive you of yours. If someone does something to you, and there's evil, like all this I just now read, God knows what's in their heart. But apparently they're not living for Him yet. But just imagine on the broader picture, on the big scheme of things, if God was to get that heart and turn it into a heart of flesh where they actually feel the love for others, how much more would they grow? Not only that, all the evil that they had done, they would remember. And that right there would be worse to them than anything that you could ever do to them. Because it's them doing it to themselves inside.
And we never forget it, just like you said, all the evil I've done, sir.
That's the point.
I can never forget it. Ever.
Yes. Because that's what happened to me. I remember all the times that I didn't do right. I remember all the people that I led astray by my actions. I also see all the wasted time.
Mm-hmm.
So try not to judge too harshly, because we don't know exactly what someone is going through or what they're understanding. But when you see this in there, don't be so quick to say someone is a believer or not. Because just like judging, we don't know what's in their heart.
That's right.
But what's in their heart will show forth by their actions.
Mm-hmm.
The way they talk about or for people, and the way they treat people. What's in the heart will always come forth.
Yes, sir.
But continue to pray for one another, continue to grow in His Word, and know that His kingdom is here. One of these days, we're not going to have to worry about all this pain. We ain't going to have to worry about all this deception. We'll see. We'll know.
And those people that fall, sir, that do manifest, and you do see that their actions, we should pray for them.
Yes, absolutely.
Pray for them, because they need help.
Yes. I see it online all the time, where people is trying to bash someone else. The whole entire time they're holding up signs. I'm a Christian. I'm over this group. I'm over that group. I'm a singer over here. But the whole entire message they saying is hate.
Yep.
That's not of God. And if you're listening to it, please stop. Because their character is showing you exactly who they are, and they're going to pull your soul to hell with them. Because they're so ate up with hate that they don't have love. This is what those 7 letters is talking about in Revelation. Don't take my word for it. Read them yourself. Study them yourself. When you study, it means continue to go over it. Everything will come forth in their actions. Anyway, keep pressing forward.